Thank you so much. Good evening to you all. It is my great pleasure to be here with you tonight, this evening, and spend some time with you discussing the perspectives and prospects of what we hope for, NATO enlargement process that should include Montenegro as a next step. But I'm particularly glad to be here with you tonight because this is my first time ever in Canada and first time ever in Toronto, and it is really with great pleasure to be able to take part in the Atlantic Council event, which has always been everywhere a great partner of ours, Montenegro, and interestingly enough, I think about the same time this evening as I speak to you, our Prime Minister, who is visiting Washington, is speaking to Atlantic Council in Washington. I hope that it also tells a lot about our intention and about our active engagement to bring Montenegro closer to the NATO community, the Western community, in order to complete, hopefully, the process of integration of Montenegro into the NATO, as along with our intention and our ambition to bring Montenegro closer to the membership to the EU, which are both our foreign priorities. Some of you obviously are familiar with Montenegro, but let me quickly recall some aspects of our history. Montenegro is a very small country. 600,000 people, 650,000 people according to the most recent census. But it has been a very, very old country of Montenegro, of Europe, going back even to the 11th century, when what at that point was the first state, same area, first state that has roots or connection with nowadays Montenegro, Doclian state, was recognized by Pope Gregory VII. For everybody who studies history and institution development, Gregory VII was a very important pope because he was the one who, battling, he had a lot of political battles with rulers of what in that period of time was Europe. Actually fought about the question of legitimacy, and he managed to win that battle. So it was the Pope who actually brought legitimacy to earthly rulers. But since then, we had a couple of incarnations as a country. For a while, we also fell under the Turkish Ottoman Empire rule, but it was roughly about only 100 years, because very early in the 16th century, it was the people who lived in that part of Europe that decided to simply ignore the Turkish rule, the Ottoman rule. And interestingly enough, it was because they didn't like paying taxes to Istanbul. So in a way it was our Tea Party already in the 16th century. But recognized as internationally recognized country, international subject, Montenegro came to be only in 1878 at the Berlin Congress, which was again in a way a consequence, and European rulers at that time liked so much organizing conferences. I may touch upon that issue later on, connecting it with some of the today's problems in our wide region. But in 1878, Bismarck hosted a conference which, as one of the outcomes, had recognition of Montenegro, also recognition of Serbia and Bulgaria. But again, interestingly enough, as this year we mark 100 years since the First World War, Great War, broke out, and it was in Balkans. According to some of the historians, it was so-called Balkan inception scenario. So, following up on the assassination of the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungarian Empire, Franz Ferdinand, Sarajevo war came, And Montenegro was one of the sides, one of the allies at that time, 100 years ago. But many historians, writing books about 100 years from the First World War would mention Montenegro and the role we played. By chance, in one of the meetings today, I got familiar with one of interesting books that came out recently. It is written by Canadian-born historian Macmillan, if I'm not wrong, Margaret Macmillan, who put together an interesting book about the First World War. But I'd like to remind everyone on Christopher Clark's also Sleepwalkers. Excellent overview of the decades that led to the First World War. I'm pointing this out because many will find common roots. Many will find parallels between what today about the world in which we live today with what we had 100 years ago. And some people may also point out to the current Ukrainian crisis as bringing back the practices of the 19th century in Europe, which I still hope will not happen, and maybe rather different reasons that brought to today's crisis. But that's where we are. One of the countries in Europe, although we regained our independence only 2006, only 8 years ago, but we've had a long tradition of statehood. Modern Montenegro, that used to be one of 6 former socialist Yugoslavia republics. We were the smallest, but we were also the poorest when Yugoslavia collapsed in the early 90s. Today is a country that aspires membership into the EU, membership into NATO, and is no longer the poorest country in the region, following Slovenia and Croatia, who are already both members of EU and NATO. Croatia as recently as last year. We're the most prosperous country, although there's a lot more to be done and a lot more to be reformed, and again, a lot more to be done in order really to reach what we'd like to reach, and it is at least average European purchase power. Where we are right now when talking about some of our key foreign priorities. Well, first of all, we have set our strategic goals very clearly. And again, it is the membership into the EU, the membership to the NATO. What we hope for is obviously, chronologically, that the membership to NATO will come much sooner. Actually, we hope, and day by day, working very diligently to meet all the prerequisites, all the outstanding requirements. We actually hope that foreign ministers next June may discuss the possibilities of inviting Montenegro to join NATO. And as you know, the upcoming summit in Wales could again be a possibility, or rather opportunity, to continue with the implementation of the open door policy. In both cases, in the case of NATO, and likewise in the case of the EU, enlargement policy has been one of the most effective, one of the most successful integration policy. And therefore we really believe that it is important to stick to the open door policy. But where we are right now, with regards to the EU, in the middle of 2012 we opened accession talks. We're already tackling 1/3 roughly, or 30% of the chapters to be negotiated. For those of you who are not that familiar with the process, there is 35 chapters to negotiate with EU, out of which actually 33 is to negotiate, because 34, 35, it's more like miscellaneous and other things. You usually close just days ahead of completing the process. And therefore there is 33 to discuss and negotiate. We're already dealing with 9. And hopefully this year, along this year, we will be able to open negotiations in a lot more. Actually, our idea is to try to open all the talks in the coming 2 years, in order to start meeting closing benchmarks, and hopefully in years 2016, 17, 18, we may hope to close talks in all those chapters, in order to be ready to sign accession agreement. Currently, the new approach that is applied to the Western Balkan countries. We belong to the region which politically is called Western Balkans. Romania, Bulgaria usually referred as to Eastern Balkans. In British Foreign Office there is a department called Eastern Adriatic. So all those geographical references, not to be confused with Balkan countries and with what once used to be Yugoslavia. So therefore we are referred to as Western Balkans, and for all those countries that aspire to become EU member states, like Serbia, like Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, Kosovo, a new approach is taken, and the one that suggests that you need to deal with institutional development, especially in the field of the rule of law, the field of battle against organized crime, corruption, judiciary. So dealing with fundamentals first. As time will go by, there will be also a lot of accent on economic governance in order to be able to meet requirements, and once you're ready for the membership, you won't be a country that may ask for a bailout just after you enter EU. So that's the new approach, and that should be applied to all the countries. And that's why it will take some time, but it is a good approach because it helps countries deal with those fundamentals already from the beginning. I'm pointing this out because it is also very important from the NATO point of view, because most of the member states of the NATO are at the same time member states of EU and the other way around. Of course, Canada is a country in its own, United States of course, Iceland's a different story, Turkey is still a different story, but there is a lot of countries in EU who would like to keep this common denominator of the set of values that being part of both organizations is actually means that you share the set of values, and both integration processes are based on the same set of values. Right now, talking to many people in Montenegro, because we've been actively engaged in trying to win as high public support as possible about the NATO membership. We actually refer to the NATO and EU as two compatible complementary processes, because there's no political stability and in the long run economic prosperity unless you're fully secure, unless you reach the level of security which is demanded. Therefore, those two processes we see as compatible and complementary. But again, we believe and we hope that NATO membership will come sooner, of course, than EU, because NATO membership will help streamline the process of further integration into the EU, will mean a further contribution to the security of both the Montenegro, Western Balkans, but we also believe the whole Mediterranean.